I've got Asheebo. We're here with this week's Chatham NC Sports Roundup. We weren't here yesterday because all three of us, myself, Asheebo, and Coach Berry, were in Winston-Salem for the Seaforth versus North Pitt basketball game. We'll be talking about that later on. There's the agenda that we're going to run through today. We'll see what Asheebo's got in the Chatham News and Record paper that came out yesterday. He's going to go over the scores, athlete of the week, some information on JM coaching situation, and then we're going to get into the basketball playoffs. Coach Berry will not be joining us today because he's got scheduling conflicts. So this is pretty much going to be the Asheebo Rojas show. So Asheebo, take it away.
Yeah, I want to start with some of the stories that are coming out in the Chatham News and Record today, if you guys want to go and pick it up. So first, we got the story from Northwood following the Farmville in the fourth round of the playoffs on Friday. And then we also have a story from basketball players making all district, and I'll list those in a second. And then Jordan Matthews also played their first boys volleyball game last week and won the game against Carborough 3-0. And they played a couple more games during this week as well. So some big new things happening in Chatham County. And then, of course, we have the Spring Sports Roundup in the paper as well. And regarding the basketball players that made all district for the North Carolina Basketball Coaches Association's all district teams, we had our Chatham County athletes. They were in District 4, and we had a couple who make first team, some make second team, some make third team. And so for the boys, first team from Chatham County, we had Drake Powell and Reed Albright, our two big names here in the county all year for the boys side. And then on the third team, we had Cam Fowler from Northwood, Brennan Oldham from Jordan Matthews, and Nate Emerson from Seaforth. So congrats to those boys, especially Nate Emerson. I feel like, he kind of flew under the radar a little bit. We talked a lot about Powell and Albright and Brennan Oldham a little bit, but Nate Emerson, he had a really good season scoring for Seaforth there this past season. And then for the girls side, we have also two in District 4. First team, all district, was Gabby White from Seaforth. Second team, Skylar Adams from Northwood. And third team, Mia Brooks from Chatham Charter. So congrats to the girls. Congrats to all the athletes that made all district for the North Carolina Basketball Coaches Association. We had a very good year of basketball here in Chatham County that will wrap up here today in the roundup. And then, I also want to drop some big news from Jordan Matthews football. As everyone knows, they had let go of Coach Ryan Johnson a couple weeks ago. And as of Wednesday, I believe, or it might have been Tuesday. As of Tuesday, Jordan Matthews, they have just hired Kermit Carter as their new head football coach. And Coach Carter, he's an assistant with the basketball team. He went to Jordan Matthews, has coached at Jordan Matthews for many years, and a big part of the community. So they go in-house on the new hire, and I talked to him on Tuesday, and he's really excited to get the program back on track and build off of what Johnson did his first 3 years there. So that's the big news coming out of Jordan Matthews outside of their boys volleyball team as well. And then athlete of the week. This week, athlete of the week is going to Drake Powell for his performance in his last two games as a Northwood Charger. In those last two games, Powell, he averaged 22.5 points per game, grabbed 9 rebounds, and dished out 8 assists against Southeast Alamance in the third round. And then in the fourth round, when they were down 11 points at halftime to Farmville Central, he scored 16 points and grabbed 4 steals in the second half to help the Chargers, to help Northwood cut the lead down to just 3 in the fourth quarter. So had a big last two games for the Chargers. Unfortunately, their title run got cut short. I know they were trying to finish the job this year. So were the Seaforth girls. We had 2 teams trying to finish the job that were coming off of championship appearances last year. Of course, also the Chatham Charter girls. So unfortunately, we didn't see anyone get to cut any nuts down or celebrate a state championship, but we still had a really good season here for basketball in Chatham County. And then also want to run through, of course, our scores from last week that were in the roundup. Start with baseball. We had Chatham Central and Jordan Matthews. They were the biggest game of the week in Chatham County. And they split the 2-game series during the week, with the Bears winning the first one 10-2, and the Jets winning the second one on Friday 9-7. And then Seaforth, they lost to Williams on Thursday, 4-3, but they bounced back by beating Carborough on Monday, 16-3. And Northwood swept Southeast Alamance, beating them 6-3 on the March 5th, and then 3-0 on Friday. And then Chatham Charter, they got their season started this past week with an 18-0 win over Triangle Math and Science, and then they dominated Ascend Leadership in a doubleheader Thursday, winning 18-2 in the first game and 14-0 in the second game. And then Friday, they did lose to Williams 12-1. And then in softball, we had Chatham Central, who's looking like the top team in the conference and the county once again this year. They beat Bartlett Yancey on March 5th, 14-3. And then they also beat Seaforth Friday, 10-5. Seaforth, they beat Graham on the 5th, 15-0. Jordan Matthews beat Northwood 11-0. And then they also beat Northmore 11-8 on Friday. And then Northwood lost to Bartlett Yancey on Friday, 13-3. Then we have girls soccer. And girls soccer, Woods Charter, they beat Cornerstone Charter 6-1 on March 5th. And then they beat Rivermill 9-0 on Monday. And then Jordan Matthews, they suffered 3 losses during the week. They lost to Asheboro, Southeast Alamance, and Southern Alamance. But they bounced back on Monday with a 9-0 win over Cummings. And then Northwood, they beat Northmore 7-0 Monday. And Seaforth lost to Western Alamance 3-1 on Monday as well. And then the boys lacrosse, we only got Seaforth and Northwood this season. So we got Seaforth beating Eastern Alamance 18-4 on Thursday. And then they lost to Orange on Friday, 17-3. And then Northwood, they lost to Leesville Road 10-2 on Thursday, but they beat Southern Alamance 15-0, while also losing to East Chapel Hill 13-4 on Monday. And
all right. Before you go on, let me ask you this. You had a power ranking for basketball. Are you going to do – I know you're not going to do one for lacrosse because there's only 2 teams participating, but are you going to do one for baseball or softball or soccer at all, or are you even considering it, or kind of like, nah, I'm not going to do that?
I'm not too sure. I kind of wanted to learn a little bit of the baseball and softball teams we got here in the county first before I get a full power ranking. I think with basketball, we had more time to kind of talk to teams and learn see where the teams were looking like coming into the season before then. So I haven't really thought about doing a baseball softball power ranking. Considering, we haven't really got to dive into the season until now with basketball still going the past couple of weeks.
Right. And one of the things I definitely want you to touch on when we get to the basketball part of this discussion today is, and this happens every year and people complain it's way too early, but hey, let's talk about where you see the potential for these teams next year. Because again, Northwood, a lot of seniors there graduating. Seaforth girls, I think yesterday at the press conference, out of the starters, Anna's the only one that's graduating. And then, we still got Chatham Central there. So let's also talk about that as to what's coming up in the 2025 season. So I apologize for interrupting, but let's move on to the next. Go.
Oh, yeah. And then we had girls across. We had Seaforth beating Chapel Hill Thursday, 21-0. And then bouncing back and winning over Riverside Durham 10-2. And then Northwood beat Jordan on March 6th, 8-7. And then we also had a couple of track and field meets last week. You can check the results in the roundup. We had a lot of first-place finishers from the county, and Woods Charter's home meet on Thursday. And Jordan Matthews also had participated in Asheboro's meet on Friday. So you can check for the first-place finish in the roundup. And then for boys tennis, just to wrap up our spring sports roundup for the week, we had Chatham Charter beating Northwood 63. And then the Knights also beat Cornerstone Charter Thursday 6-1. Seaforth lost to Raleigh Charter 8-1 Thursday, but they beat Northwood 9-0 on Monday. And then Jordan Matthews beat Asheboro 5-4 on March 5th. So that puts a wrap on our spring sports update and all the scores from last week, and bringing us into basketball. And
all right, before going to basketball, you mentioned Northwood in girls soccer. Last year they made it to the championship round. Have you gone out to see any of their games yet, or is that something that's on your to-do list?
Oh yeah, that's definitely on the to-do list. Now that basketball is over, I'm diving full into spring sports, starting Friday, because we talked about it earlier. We'll be at the Northwood and Jordan Matthews baseball game. So yeah, I'll look at schedules and see where I'm going to head to as far as girls soccer, because I would definitely want to get out to a couple of those games this season.
Yeah, and I think you also mentioned the track, spring track. I think folks definitely need to pick up the paper and go through those roundup results, because what I've seen in track, when it doesn't matter which school, each one of the schools here in the county has one or two or more athletes that excel at track. Now, I also found out that the former Northwood track and field coach, Coach Eisenhower, Cameron Eisenhower, is gotten a position at a college. So he's a track and field coach at a college. Forget which one it is, but we'll get that information out as well. So I know that was something he was striving for. I actually dropped him a note to congratulate him on the fact that he's been successful in getting a college position. And he was pretty successful at Northwood. He enjoyed, he had some folks go on into D1 schools to compete as student athletes in college as well. So that's all I got to say. Ready to go into basketball, unless you got something else on spring sports.
Oh, nope. We can go right into it for basketball.
Right.
Yeah, and kind of want to start with Friday's Northwood game against Farmville Central. And Gene, I know Gene, we were talking about it a little bit earlier, but in that one, of course, Northwood lost that one, a close one at the end. But they fell down early. Farmville Central really came out firing, especially with MJ Williams hitting threes. Throughout the whole first half, he hit 6 threes and finished the first half with 24 points. But after that first quarter, Northwood really started to settle in. They kind of brought themselves back, and I think they were down 11 at halftime. But after halftime, they kind of brought themselves back, just possession after possession, getting buckets. And then on the other end, really Drake Powell was anchoring the defensive side and getting stops there. So they got plenty of steals. Also, Bo Harvey was really active on the steals as well. So they brought it back and got it to within 3 early on in the fourth quarter. Looked like they could, possibly make a run, but Farmville Central, they were just a really good team. Made the big shots when they needed to, especially down there at the end. And Drake Powell, he tried his best to will his team. I think he scored, like we said, we scored 16 points in that second half to kind of bring them back, but it just wasn't enough with anyone else, hitting shots as well at the end. So that one.
What was the style of play? Because we talked about this before. I stayed and watched part of the Goldsboro versus Farmville Central game yesterday over at Winston-Salem. And the guys are big, they're quick, they're athletic, and seeing them play against Goldsboro and how they took over the second quarter, I need to commend Northwood on the way they were able to play and keep it close. What's your sense as to the styles and what did Northwood do well that made them competitive with Farmville Central? Because based upon what I saw yesterday, I'm like, holy cow, these guys have a lot of they got a lot going for them, and Northwood is able to stay close with those folks.
Yeah, it was just really what they do best, right? Is play defense, and that's whether it's getting out in transition, because they did really limit, Farmville's ability to get out in transition and run up the score that way. Farmville they just made a lot of really tough shots. Especially with MJ Williams. A lot of times he would come down, they will hold him and then wouldn't let him drive. They were really active in the paint, but when he's hitting from outside and just pulling up from, a couple feet from behind 3-point line and making them, sometimes that's just how it goes. So I think that was a big factor, especially their shooting performance in the first half. But like I said, in that second half, especially that third quarter, Northwood just did a really good job with ball pressure. And I think they put in some traps there as well to get some turnovers. So they really executed the defensive plan really well there in the third quarter, and then paired that with, getting some shots to fall there in the third quarter and slowing it down offensively. I think that really helped them there, bring it back and keep it competitive. And even at the end, even when Farmville got up a little bit, they even did another small comeback in the final few minutes of the game. And like I talked to Coach Brown, texted him after the game, and it was just, like you said, it was just plays that didn't go their way, that went Farmville's way as far as shots, loose balls, that ultimately made the difference at the end of that one.
All right.
Yeah. And then we also had Seaforth. Now, Gene, we were watching this one yesterday, Seaforth and North Pitt. That one wasn't as close. For Seaforth, especially when we got into the second quarter. But the first quarter, I think the biggest thing we noticed from Seaforth was that Gabby was in attack mode pretty much that entire game.
She had 30 points.
Yeah, 30 points, 11 rebounds. She started the game with an and one on the first possession. That was her first touch. It was an and one. But unfortunately, kind of the story of that one was turnovers offensively. North Pitt came with high intensity defense. They were playing man to man, really uptight ball pressure that kind of rattled Seaforth a little bit, especially early on. And then really outside of Gabby, they couldn't get any much offense, outside of her. Kate, I think like we were breaking it down after the first half. I think only Katie and Jocelyn, and I think Peyton had put one up too. I think they were the only three that attempted shots, and there was only like 7 shots between those three outside of Gabby. So and of course they weren't hitting it as well. So between turnovers and not making shots, North Pitt was able to get out in transition with Zamariah Jones and Jordan Speller. I mean, they were just getting easy layups in transition, coming down the court with blow-bys and layups. So kind of was a rough day on both sides, really, for Seaford, kind of taking care of the basketball and also stopping those two guards. And I mean, shout out to North Pitt. That's a very impressive team, especially Jordan Speller, who was a freshman, came in. I think she had 12, and she had 12 in the first half and didn't miss a shot in the first half. So they were just a really good team that also had revenge on their mind from last year in the exact same round when Seaford beat them. So tough outing there for the Hawks. But like you said, we were going to talk about where these teams are going to be next year. Seaford is only losing to Hannah Ajayi now, who was a crucial part of their success this year. But they're bringing back Gabby, Mia, Katie, Peyton, Jocelyn, that core. So, I don't think Seaford has much to hang their head on, after that one, because we asked them in the post game, Gabby is confident she'll be back. And also, I think a really interesting thing Gabby said, she said herself that she's one of the best guards in the country. And I mean, I think she proved she did a good job of backing that up, even despite the loss in that.
Yeah, she had 4 fouls going in there towards the end, and the coach pulled her out temporarily and then put her back in. And I'll have the video up of the game later on today. As usual, check that out on the YouTube channel. But I noticed there was a series where she went in. Tried to lay it up. It kind of rolled, but didn't go in. She got the rebound, went up for another shot. That one didn't go in. She got another rebound. And then finally on the third shot, she got it in. So she was definitely not looking to lose. And as you said in that post-game press conference, she's sitting there to our left corner on her right. And she's like, yeah, I'm the best guard one of the best guards in the country. And we're going to come back. I was tempted to ask, but I didn't. And I think I'm glad I didn't. But you mentioned the press conference that North Pitt had. They brought up 2 things. They referred to this game as their revenge game because they lost last year to C4. And they also mentioned the fact they appreciated the fact that high school OT mentioned that high school OT was picking C4 to win this game. And I think that did a lot to drive. That was a lot of their drive behind them. And I think Coach Berry had mentioned that they actually had newspaper clipping of the loss from last year up in their locker room. So, they kind of came on top of their revenge game. I don't think C4 plays revenge games. Now, we've seen them play against Northwood. They won the first one, lost the second one, and came back and won the third one. So they learned from their experiences, and I think this loss will serve them well next year. Going back to another thing, we talked at halftime, you, myself, and PJ, they were down by 12 points. And we've seen where maybe they have a slow first half, they come back in the second half. But that didn't happen yesterday. And I think you mentioned that Gabby had 30 points, but your usual scores, I think they might have had just 1 3. The girls in the corners are the usual 3-point shooters. I don't know, seem to hesitate or they didn't seem to play with the style that you and I are used to seeing them play. So that's my thought is, I don't know. And I asked the question if, they were used to playing in that such a large arena, and they said it wasn't a big deal. But they kind of seem to maybe think a little bit too much instead of getting into their usual style of play. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I just think that's a credit to North Pitt and, the intensity they brought on defense because, I mean, we know with Seaford, their strength is their guards with Gabby, Katie, and then off the bench, we got Peyton as well. And off the bench, you got Mia Moore that can come in and knock some shots too. And I think with Zamariah and Jordan Speller, those two up front. I mean, just getting in C4's faces, keeping the ball pressure on. It was a lot of times where C4 even got backed up from long passes back almost to half court because I mean they were right there in passing lanes as well too. That was another big thing where they try to get a pass off and someone playing really good help defense just picks it off and takes it all the way for a layup. So I think the pressure I think the defensive pressure just got to C4 and rattled them. And once it was a couple of possessions where it was consecutive turnovers for layups, it's just really hard to, kind of build your momentum back after that. And I think that's really where the game got out of hand.
Yep. But hey, they made it to the Final Four, which let's see, there's only 4 out of this, and really nice effort. And I think you also mentioned this when we were talking yesterday. And you might brought up the question. It's what C4's third year, and they've been this far twice. So all right, do you want to go into what you see for each of the teams going into 2025-26 season for basketball?
Well, I think a lot of our teams should have a positive outlook for next year because we don't have a lot of seniors. Especially our big names, a lot of them will be coming back for their senior year or for junior, sophomore year, depending on how old they are. But yeah, starting with on the boys' side, with C4 is going to be interesting because they're going to have a new coach. They're going to have some new faces that's going to have to step up. They're losing Cooper Jones, one of their leaders from last year to graduation. But should everybody come back, that brings more room for Nate Emerson to finally take on that primary role as well. So for them, it'll be interesting to see how a new coach with some different faces, probably pulling up from JV from last year, will fit. I think the biggest one we want to know about is Northwood because they'll be losing Drake Powell this year to graduation, going to UNC. But when I look at Northwood, I still see a really good core coming back with Cam, Chad Graves, and also some of the younger guys too that we saw in their JV and coming off the bench as well. Isaiah Blair, who also will probably see a bigger role next year for his senior year. I think they still have a really good core to come back and still lead the conference and make a big push in the playoffs, even with Drake's absence. And I mean, Cam really showed up in a big way in the last couple of games, especially against Farmville Central. Like when Drake was a little off, when they were, playing great defense on Drake, he was a little off there in the first half. It was Cam that was providing some of a spark there, especially in that first quarter. I think when Northwood got down in that first quarter, they put Cam in off the bench, and he came in and gave them 6 quick points. So, he's really grown, and he's only a sophomore. He's going to be a junior next year with a big future ahead of him. And then Chatham Central, they'll be bringing back a lot of their core as well. They'll be losing Devontae, which I think is a big loss. He was a really big piece of their success this year. But with Reed, Aiden Johnson down low, they got some young guys coming off the bench as well that will be coming back. I think Chatham Central will be once again a really big force in 1A and another good team there in the conference as well. And Jordan Matthews will be interesting as well. As we know, they still have Coach Wiley at the helm, but they'll be losing, his son Neil, who was a ball handler for them. They'll be bringing back Brennan, but they'll also be losing Kelton, who was another key piece that could shoot and handle the ball for Jordan Matthews and get some rebounds down low. So Jordan Matthews, it'll be interesting to see how their young guys come in. They had a couple of young guys get some burn in some big games like Zion and Gus. Who I assume will be back for Jordan Matthews, and I assume will have a bigger role next year as well. So when I'm looking at the boys, I'm seeing a little bit of kind of a similar way that this season went. But I think a lot of teams have a chance to really get better when they bring in some of these younger guys and get them ready to go this offseason. And of course,
anything on Chatham Charter? What do you see happening there?
Yeah, I was about to say our charter schools as well, and our Chatham Charter, they'll be losing a couple big seniors like Jonah Rigil. And I think I'm not too sure if Aiden Allred is a senior. I have to check, but that'll be another. They're kind of still in the transitionary period. Talking with Coach Messier. about this year and how, with some guys leaving last year, it's a little different team. So not too sure what we'll see from Chatham Charter next year, because I feel like it'll be a little some new pieces there as well. And then for Woods, though, I mean, they had a big year with kind of a variety of ages, making an impact. They had Levi Haygood, who was a freshman, who'll be back as well. They'll lose Eli Hunter DeMarco, who was a big piece, one of the underrated players here in the county this past season. But they seems like, talking with them after their historic season for, to build on that success later on. And once again, they're a 1A. So, they'll have plenty of time, plenty of opportunity to get that thing, going in the right direction, build off of last season. And, I won't be surprised we see them in the playoffs again. And maybe they might even win a first round game this year and advance in the state playoffs next year. So we'll see.
All right. How about the girls?
For the girls, yes. I think Northwood, looking at the girls for Northwood, I think they can still be very good with who they got coming back. Now, they'll be losing some key pieces like Skylar Adams. That's a big one. But I'm confident in Natalia Whitaker and her ability to step in as a senior and lead the team, and also some other pieces as well, like the Glover twins down low. They'll have another year of experience under their belt going into, I think, their junior year. So I really expect once again Northwood and Seaford to be the top two, because we know Seaford, they're bringing everybody back except Hannah Ajayi and Jenna Thompson, and Hannah was the only starter they'll be losing. So those two, I see them at the top there in the two-way side. Also Chatham Central, I think they'll still be a pretty good team down there competing with the two-way schools, but for a spot in 1A. And I think another team that will be interesting to look at is Chatham Charter, because Hannah Hedden was a freshman. So interesting to see, what she does her sophomore year and kind of the pieces they'll bring up to fill in for Mia Brooks, who will be leaving this year. So Jordan Matthews, I think they'll have another kind of a transitionary year we'll have another young team again next year, I'm sure. And they're losing Leah Carter as a senior, but they'll have Jetta Scott coming in and see if she can get better down low and help lead that team with Yamalet Lozano as well, who hit some big shots for them this season. So I can see a lot of our girls teams getting better, same way as the boys side. But I do, for the girls side, I do expect, Seaport and Northwood to be those top two down there for the Mid Carolina 1A, 2A conference.
Yeah, I think we'll have a lot of fun talking about it next year. And I think this year your basketball rankings were kind of settled in there and pretty much steady week after week. I don't know if that's going to be the case next year. And the interesting thing you mentioned is, you've got some seniors graduating, but you still have some freshmen, sophomores, and juniors who are going to be moving up that are going to be able to fill those gaps. They're going to fill those gaps differently. We've got Reed, who's going to be around, as you mentioned. Chad over Chad over at Northwood. I mean, he's been improving. You got Mr. Fowler; he's improving too, and he's a sophomore. And I think Chad's a junior, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yeah, there's going to be improvements. And folks, if you enjoyed following Asheebo and his articles about what's been going on in Chatham County high school basketball, I think you need to definitely keep reading it, because I think next year is going to be exciting as well. Anything else we need to talk about before we wrap up?
Nope, I think we got it all covered.
All right. Well, in that case, folks, this is where I know that I will be at tomorrow's game shooting the Jordan Matthews at Northwood baseball game, and Asheebo is going to be at that. And do you know what you're doing yet next week, or do you have to figure that out over the weekend?
I'll be figuring that out over the weekend.
Yeah, that's it. Look, baseball and softball and lacrosse and track and soccer are all coming. We're just wrapping up the basketball stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I got to get some pictures out from last night. Didn't have a chance to do that. Got home, and actually my wife and I sat there and watched basketball. We watched ACC basketball, and I appreciate the 14 people that are watching us right now, because right now it's 12:30, and Asheebo, being a UNC graduate, should be watching the Tar Heels playing Florida State right now. Their game started at 12 o'clock. So, folks, we appreciate all the folks that are watching right now. Last week we had over 500 folks watch us in the first 2 days. I haven't seen the final number, but on an average, we're getting more than 500 folks a week watching us. Thank you so much for doing that. We'll be back next week. I think we will be back to our regularly scheduled time, Wednesday at midnight. Yeah, midnight. Wednesday at noon, not at midnight. See, it's that basketball stuff. But look, go pick up the paper. See Asheebo. Look, let's face it. Here in Chatham County, the paper's worth picking up just for the sports, and Asheebo's out there all the time. And don't forget to follow him on Twitter X at Asheebo R38, and he'll keep you up to date as to what's going on. And look, if you want to know what's going on at the baseball game tomorrow, come on out or just follow Asheebo on Twitter. Everybody, thank you so much. Asheebo, thank you. We'll be seeing you on